Welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're unpacking a really fascinating dynamic, and honestly, it's one that affects absolutely every single one of us. We're talking about that deep, very human instinct to just fear being exposed, right? I mean, we spend so much energy hiding our flaws, our mistakes, our insecurities, but what if the very thing we are literally terrified of, exposure, is actually the only pathway to true liberation? It's a crazy thought, but today we're diving into the historical and theological narrative of John chapter 8. It completely reframes this fear and shows us exactly how Jesus' light provides unparalleled freedom. To really grasp this paradigm shift, we kind of have to start with a highly relatable question. Why do we instinctively hate the light when it comes to our personal lives? Well, the sources we're looking at today point back to that classic piece of parental wisdom. You know the one, nothing good happens in the dark. And sure, teenagers might roll their eyes at that, but it's actually incredibly profound. Darkness conceals. It hides the things we just don't want anyone to see. Light, on the flip side, exposes the whole shebang. Okay, let's dive into this. Think for a second about what actually thrives in the pitch black. You've got cockroaches, you've got rats, and you have thieves in the night. And what do all three of these have in common? Literally, the absolute second you flip on a light switch, they scatter. They make a run for the shadows because the light exposes their presence. Now, here's the really uncomfortable truth our source material points out. Human beings often react the exact same way to exposure. When our own flaws or our failures are suddenly illuminated, our gut instinct is to scatter. When we feel exposed, we usually try to cover it up as fast as possible. We get defensive, we shift the blame, or we lean hard into escapism, using things like excess alcohol, endless entertainment, or even just anger to dull or distract from our insecurities. We hate exposure because we feel like it condemns us. But here's the absolute game changer presented in our source. What if exposure isn't actually meant to condemn you? What if exposure is the very mechanism that brings healing and freedom? Turns out we actually don't have to be terrified of being exposed.
Section 1. Hiding versus abiding, the ultimate paradigm shift.
So let's see how this builds as we look at the actual events of John chapter 8. Here, we get this incredible real-time historical illustration of this exact conflict. A group of people encounter Jesus, and as he reveals who he is, they suddenly find their own hearts and secrets completely exposed. It's a famous narrative. The religious leaders, the Pharisees, drag a woman caught in adultery right to Jesus in front of a massive crowd. It's a total setup. If Jesus lets her go, he breaks the law of Moses. If he condemns her to death, he runs afoul of the Roman authorities. But notice the drastic contrast in their reactions here. When Jesus turns the tables and exposes the hidden sins of the religious leaders, they run, they hide, they bolt for the darkness. But the woman whose shame was just completely publicized to everyone, she remains. She lingers in the light. And because she stays, she experiences true liberation. And this brilliantly illustrates how Jesus handles our darkest secrets. When presented with this totally impossible trap, Jesus simply bends down and begins writing in the dust with his finger. Now, some scholars believe this points straight back to Genesis, signifying that he is the creator God who formed man from the dust, the all-knowing, all-seeing God who has the ultimate authority to examine our lives. Then he stands up and says, "If any one of you is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone." I mean, absolute mic drop. He exposes their secret sins not to condemn them, but to offer a chance at healing. Sadly, they walk away, but the woman stays, and Jesus tells her, "Go now and leave your life of sin." Which brings us to a massively foundational concept in our explainer today. The woman didn't flee, she abided. Now, to abide means to hold to remain, to make your home in a specific teaching. A genuine disciple of Jesus doesn't run away when things get uncomfortable or when their flaws are painfully exposed. They allow his teachings to become the controlling factor in their lives. So the rhythmic anchor of our analysis today is exactly this. Don't run and hide, abide. Section 2, the 4 dimensions of freedom. Now that we've established this huge paradigm shift, that exposure in the light is actually a profoundly good thing, let's break down the core theology of the text. According to the source material, when we choose to abide rather than hide, Jesus' light liberates us in 4 very distinct, very powerful ways. Let's just walk through this sequence. Step 1 is freedom from sin and guilt. Just like with the woman, Jesus doesn't condemn. He forgives and completely removes the heavy weight of our past. Step 2 is freedom from spiritual darkness. He provides a guiding light in a deeply confusing world. Step 3 is freedom from spiritual bondage. This means breaking the actual slavery of habitual, repetitive sin that we just can't seem to shake on our own. And finally, step 4 is freedom from spiritual death, which is the ultimate victory over our greatest fear. To understand step 2 a bit better, we really have to look at the context of one of Jesus's most famous statements. In John 8:12, he declares, "I am the light of the world." But he doesn't just say this randomly on a Tuesday. He makes this audacious claim in the temple courtyard during the Feast of Tabernacles. This was a massive Jewish festival that specifically celebrated light. They would literally light these gargantuan candelabras that illuminated the entire city of Jerusalem at night. And what exactly was that festival celebrating? Well, it was celebrating the historical pillar of fire that God used to lead the Israelites through the dark, freezing desert in the book of Exodus. That pillar of fire provided 3 absolutely crucial things: God's presence, God's protection from the bitter cold desert night, and God's guidance. If the pillar moved, the people moved. So by declaring, "I am the light of the world," right smack in the middle of this festival, Jesus is saying that he provides this exact same presence, protection, and guidance to anyone who abides in him today.
Section 3, freedom within constraints.
Now, what's really interesting here is when Jesus talks about liberating us from spiritual bondage, that's step 3, his definition of freedom completely contradicts how our modern world views it. Modern culture tells us that true freedom means living with absolutely zero constraints. Do whatever you want whenever you want. But the text argues the exact opposite. Jesus says that true freedom is actually found by living within the constraints of his teaching. Think about it. Because God designed us, he knows exactly how we operate best. True freedom, purpose, and meaning aren't found in some lawless free-for-all. They're only found when we submit to the freeing constraints of the Creator's word. It's like a train, right? A train is only truly free to travel fast and safely when it stays on the constraints of its tracks.
And why should we trust his constraints? Well, that brings us to step 4, his authority over death itself. The religious leaders challenged Jesus on his authority, basically saying, "Who do you think you are? Even Abraham died." And Jesus delivers the ultimate, climactic mic drop moment of the entire chapter. He says, "Before Abraham was born, I am." He straight up claims the divine name of God. He's proving that he has the ultimate authority, not just to forgive sins, but to grant eternal life and conquer our absolute greatest enemy, spiritual death.
Section 4, hide or abide, the final choice. As we bring our explainer to a close today, we have to move this from historical theology right into our daily lives. We are all dealing with things we want to keep in the dark. We're all dealing with fear, with habitual flaws, and with a deep, deep insecurity of being truly known. So what do we do when we feel that fear creeping in? The source material uses a really powerful, universally understood metaphor. Imagine a child lying awake in bed, completely terrified of a shadowy monster in their closet. They are paralyzed by fear. But then a parent comes in and abruptly turns on the light. At first, the sudden light is jarring, right? It's uncomfortable to the eyes. But once their eyes adjust, the light exposes the truth. There is no monster. It's just a pile of laundry. The light had to expose the reality of the room in order to free the child from their fear. Jesus' light does the exact same thing for our souls. So the source material leaves us with this final, provocative thought to consider. Look at your own life. Where do you need the liberating light of Jesus to shine right now? What are you keeping in the dark because you're terrified of the shadows? The truth is, exposure isn't meant to destroy you, it's meant to heal you. When you feel the urge to scatter like those creatures of the night, remember the woman in the temple. Stay in the light. Don't run and hide. Abide. Because as this text so beautifully argues, when the light finally hits the dark corners of your life, you might just find that you are completely, truly free.